So, hey everybody, my name's Chris Davidson. I'm the Campus and Community Engagement Librarian at Northwestern University, and I'm one of the committee members of the ULS Academic Outreach Committee that hosts these roundtables, roughly quarterly roundtables, related to academic engagement activities. Today's discussion is engaging your community with exhibits and displays, a relatively popular topic, it seems like, judging by the number of people that we've had to register for all of these. So what we're going to do before we kick off with the questions is we're just going to do around the room. If everybody could just introduce themselves by their name, maybe their job title and their institution. And I'm going to go down this way to this way for me. So let's start with Ashley.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ashley Hosbach, and I am the Education and Social Science Research Librarian at the University of Virginia.
And Beth.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can see me or not, but okay, good. I'm Beth Heldebrandt, Public Relations Director at Booth Library at Eastern Illinois University in Charleston, Illinois.
Thanks, Beth. Elizabeth.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Farrell, and I am the Digital Services Librarian at Palm Beach Atlantic University in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Great. Gary and Friend.
Hi, I'm Gary Marks, Reference and Outreach Librarian at William Patterson University, New Jersey, and this is
Pat Moore, and I work in the Curriculum Materials Center.
Was you say your name was Beth?
Pat.
Pat. Sorry. And then I think next is Laura. If you unmute your microphone, we'll be able to hear you.
Hello.
There you are.
Hi, I am the library director for Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in Georgia.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And then Lissa.
Hi, I'm Lissa Fields, and I work at Montana State University and in the library as a program assistant.
And then next on the list, there's Nicole. Nicole had to run due to a building emergency in her building, but we're hoping everything is good and safe, and she'll return hopefully shortly as that passes. So to kick things off, and I'll add the questions as we're discussing them just to keep everybody's mind refreshed in the group chat. If there's any issues, you can also use the group chat as well. What are the types of goals that you set for your exhibits and displays? Like why do you have exhibits and displays at your institution? No goals.
Oh, I can start. So for me, I work as a liaison librarian to the Curry School of Education and Human Development. So when I set up displays and kind of pop-up libraries that I'm working on, I want to make sure that I'm staying true to the mission of my school and my departments. And then I also like to have a goal of kind of bringing out what we call hidden collections. University of Virginia has started moving to a high density storage facility, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and other libraries are starting to move towards too, which means that browsing and accessibility can be difficult for some patrons. So it's pulling materials out of high density storage and kind of bringing them back into a setting where students, staff, and faculty can interact with them. So I kind of have those loose kind of goals in mind when I'm starting to set up displays.
So similarly, oh, go ahead.
I can go ahead and jump in. I was looking for the raise your hand thing that I heard you mention, but I can't find it. So this is Beth. We're in a pretty rural area in East Central Illinois. So the closest university to us is a little over an hour away, University of Illinois in Champaign. So when we have the opportunity to do some of our major exhibits, we're really bringing something to our geographic area that not very many other locations around us can accommodate. We've made it a goal over the last, say, 5 years or so to involve our greater community beyond the campus. And having our exhibits is one way that we've been able to do that.
Great. Lisa?
So, similarly to Beth, right? We are in the process of moving a bunch of our books off campus, which is making more room for student activities and workspaces. So we're trying to promote more of our spaces to have displays as a way to engage the students and get them interactive in different events that we're having. So we've got lots of repeat events that we do, that such as we're having a trout lecture coming up since we're a big fishing state, and stuff like that. So we're always looking for ways to engage the students with different things that are going on in the community, and just try and be more relevant in a world that is starting to go more digital.
I can jump in if we are moving along. We have, I guess, a number of different purposes for our exhibits. We have 6 display cases, and they all have a different specific purpose. Some of them are to highlight student work. So we have student publications, magazines, things like that, done by like student clubs, student groups, and the art department. We have a humanities display case, a current events display case, the lobby display case, and then Pat coordinates our education display case. So.
Yeah, so the education one is usually subject area content, or things that are happening in education, something new. We get new stuff in, that goes in there. The main display case is sometimes used by other people on campus. Someone wants to do a display on, we had George Tice, photos, mainly it's stuff like that. And then we have that Chinese case, yes, too, from a donor.
Elizabeth?
I was just coughing. I'll go ahead and talk. So we moved into our building in 2007, and we have built-in display cases throughout the building, which, as far as anybody can remember, were filled that cold January day and were never touched again. But we've had some recent staffing changes, and I am happy to report that our display cases have something new in them right now. And that's because it's our university's 50th anniversary. So our goal with the exhibit cases right now is to tell the story of the university. But I was really excited about this roundtable being offered today to sort of figure out and get some ideas of what we can do with those cases moving forward, since we previously have not had any goals.
Well, good. I hope you'll get some new ideas. So when you think about your exhibits throughout the year, or if you think about your exhibits throughout the year, how and when do you calendar your exhibits and displays? I might just say exhibits just as a catch-all term, so I'm not saying exhibits and displays all the time for the next hour. Like, do you plan them out for the year? Do you just like put them up and then wait for something else to say now it's time to change that because something else has come up? How do you handle them at your institutions?
Well, at EIU, here at our library, we have one major exhibit every semester. So one that stays up pretty much for all of fall and one that stays up for pretty much all of spring. And then we have a whole bunch of little side exhibits that come and go throughout the year. So the major exhibits we plan 2 to 3 years out. In some cases, those are traveling exhibits that we, apply through ALA or I'm trying to think of some of the NEH on the road and those kinds of things. And in other cases, we plan the entire exhibit in-house. For example, the exhibit that we have on display right now, the major exhibit, is commemorating the 50th anniversary of the moon landing this July. but it was all done in-house. So it's about NASA and the Apollo missions and all that sort of thing. And then we tied it in with some of our EIU alumni who went on to work at NASA to localize a little bit. But the rest of the time, you know, we have exhibits, smaller exhibits that come and go, book exhibits. Sometimes we work with, I might be getting into another question later on, but we work with other groups on campus who want to put up exhibits for like a month for, you know, African American Heritage Month or Women's History Month and that kind of thing. And those are not nearly as rigidly scheduled. We kind of try to keep those open so that we can work with other groups on campus.
So I'm still fairly new to my position, so I've been learning as I go how to get the displays up and ready. But we kind of have events that we follow, but we've tried planning out 6 months in advance. And then when things arrive unexpectedly, we try to accommodate because we've got multiple displays as well. We've got a case, and we also have we call it the Cyber Discovery Wall. It's 4 high res screens that are all together that can make one giant picture. And so we'll use that as like a slideshow exhibit, or we also have our virtual reality setup now that we use as a way for people to interact in the display. We'll get apps that people can step into. Like right now, we've got the Guter exhibit going. So it's a German engineering. And we've got, you can actually walk around the Hindenburg and check that out. And that was something somebody approached us 2 months ago and said they were going to do this and wanted us to pair. And we thought it would be a great way to get our name out there and show off our new VR equipment. So we just kind of spur of the moment hopped in.
That sounds really cool.
It is. I highly recommend you get the chance to try it.
Field trip, everybody. Gary or Ashley, do you work off a calendar?
Okay, we plan every 6 months, and our exhibits are changed with the exception of the students and the Chinese cabinets are changed every month. And we do have a few things such as our author reception that's coming up, and usually a Constitution Day. There's a few things that just happen. The only time we don't change is we usually combine July and August and make, like we had a really super one on graphic arts. And Leia's husband came and did some graphic arts. So we usually make that a really big extra special display on each of the cabinets. Except for the current awareness, that can be changed every week or 2 weeks, yeah. And sometimes we use that one to show the different things that are happening on campus.
Are all of your spaces fixed?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, all
Ashley's are not.
I'm in a unique situation from everyone else, I think, because the library where I'm located is primarily science and engineering collections, whereas my education and social science collection is both in offsite storage and in the main library. So my displays are kind of more pop-up displays that I bring with me and then display for a day or a couple hours within the education school. So I'm kind of more of a traveling display
that's
person.
very cool.
So I'm brand new to the position. This is my second month here at UVA. So I'm kind of interested in hearing how everyone kind of sets up their calendar, whether you display a public calendar for that too, and then have signups for partnering with student groups, community members, etc. I'm just interested in learning more about how to plan these strategically, again, because I don't have a physical location per se.
What do you use physically actually to set up these pop-up displays in foreign territory?
So I just use their tables. They're nice enough to give me tables and then little kind of book display type of areas to set up in main traffic areas.
Beth, you kind of alluded right into the next question, which is thinking about the people that we work with. How do you pull together the contents of your displays? Are you a one-stop operation yourself? Do you work with other organizations on campus, and how does that relationship work? has any exhibits been part of a course or project?
Well, we have one of our librarians who, among many other duties, has the title of exhibits coordinator for us. That doesn't mean he's in charge of all the exhibits, but if there is a calendar, he's in charge of it. So he's the one who usually works with any other student groups on campus or in the community. When we have those major exhibits every semester, a librarian or two is kind of put in charge of it. It's not always our exhibits coordinator. But working with campus groups has been kind of hit and miss. We've been trying really hard to do more of that. The reliability isn't always there. We get a lot of enthusiasm, but they don't always come through on their end. And then, we're kind of disappointed in the end. Last month being an example, we had a couple of meetings for African American Heritage Month and thought we had a couple of offices and student groups who were all enthusiastic, and they didn't come through at all. So when the time came to actually put it together, nothing happened. So in those cases, it's not a good thing, but we've also had a lot of success stories in working with student groups and advisors and community groups who have come in and not only loaned materials, help do research, help set up, the actual displays as far as designing it and figuring out what they're going to look like. So it just kind of depends. Sometimes it works really well and sometimes it doesn't.
I can lend to that as well. We have the same issue. We try to kind of step back and let people do what they want with the case and give them advice where we think it would be needed. But ultimately, they end up kind of falls to the back of their to-do list. And so we usually end up having to step forward and kind of take over because we want to take pride in our case and we don't want it to be kind of just a sloppy thrown together thing. So we usually end up just kind of making do, which it always turns out okay, but it always ends up in headaches for someone.
So who is in this scenario, who is the they, and what are you looking for them to bring in to those cases?
So I'm the chair of our committee. We have a group of 6 people that get together and come up with ideas for the different cases. And when we're approached by outside groups, such as with this Guter exhibit, we offered them the chance to use our case and put together information about what the event is and how the library is tied in and how it's part of the German group. And we just asked for them to bring us information. We gave them an outline for an idea of what they could do and that we would be happy to help provide some more guidance. But it was like pulling teeth trying to get information from them. So we ended up just kind of like going online and finding what we could and making it the best that we could. And they were happy with it, but we were feeling like it was lacking because we had visions of more grandeur. So.
And then, so the added workflow or whatever else needs to be done to fill your cases, does that fall to this committee?
Yeah,
Okay.
mainly toward me.
Mainly towards you.
Yeah, because, it's the committee is something that people volunteer to be on, and it's just a side part of your normal job. And so when things like this fall through, I'm not going to make the others in my group have to take on the extra workload. I had a few rise to the occasion, and they always help out, but ultimately, I end up taking it on because I don't want them to have their work suffer.
So just like maybe show of hands of the group here, how many of us have a specific person at their institution whose job it is to kind of maintain or make sure exhibits happen? I'm assuming Lissa's hand is up. Yeah. Okay. Gary and Pat, how about how are you handling the shared group distribution?
Well, our hands weren't up, so we don't have an individual responsible for it. The outreach position that I hold is a little less than a year and a half old. So I've only been in it for that long, and that's the first of its kind here. So I definitely have an interest in the exhibits, but I've been neck deep in everything else first. So we basically have an in-house committee that's volunteers that coordinates the exhibits. And I mean, Pat, her role is in the curriculum and materials department where that display and that exhibit is. So she kind of maintains that one. There's a member of the committee from the periodicals department because there's the current events exhibit is there, so he handles that one. And then the committee as a whole just solicits volunteers to help with.
Well, Stephanie has the
the humanities
one, and then Leah and Mark and I pitch in with that one too. Our large case as you first come in the library and the curio upstairs.
Yeah, our lobby.
So we do all have kind of assignments, but we get together to decide what's going to go in each case.
But anybody could drop off the committee at any time, and we have nobody who is actually responsible assigned for it. Yeah,
just Leah and I'm the co-chairs. So.
And what relationship do you have for fulfilling these exhibits and displays with anybody outside the library? Do you have any external partnerships to work with to come in?
We've had people who have come in and said, "Hey, I would like to use your space. What can I do it?" And we accommodate all that we can.
Yeah, it's kind of ad hoc. There's no established.
They contact us usually.
Or sometimes it takes place if I'm sure I coordinate our liaison program, so. Some of the areas I liaison with on campus where they have special events or commemorative type things going on, where we'll talk about, the radio station has a 30th anniversary going on. The Veterans Office of Veterans Affairs has a project going on, the Telly project. So we'll put out a display, and they send us like flag and all kinds of other, military materials to put in the case. But mostly it's just kind of ad hoc in that sense, and that's what I'm hoping to actually kind of dive into and pick some brains a little bit to see if there's a structured way people kind of organize that or approach it to campus as part of outreach, as part of like the goals of the exhibits and displays. Part of the purpose of it is to serve as an outreach venture, if they're tying it into that or not. So,
has anybody done any work with like classes to do displays and exhibits? I see Ashley nodding her head, and I'm not sure if that's yes, I have, or I like that idea.
A little bit of both. I've had one, since I work with education courses, there's a lot of courses coming, kind of centered around pre-service teachers and kind of future teacher engagement and curriculum materials. So one course that I worked with was on focusing on educating girls and young women and how women are represented in children's literature. So we met with the class and then kind of brought some materials with us, and then we kind of centered our own, what would we want to display, what type of books would you be interested in if you had a display area in your future classroom, and kind of led a discussion based on that. So we didn't have a physical setup in the library, but it was more kind of one of those discussions where each of the students got to select materials that they would have liked and kind of discuss further from there. And they really, really enjoyed that. So I think looking into that more is something that we're interested in.
Yeah, Beth.
We've had a little bit of that, more success with that if you can work through the instructor than some of the student groups that we've tried to get on to help us out with some of our exhibits. But some that come to mind in this past fall semester, we had a major exhibit looking at the flu, the 100-year anniversary of the flu pandemic and the flu today. And there was a health promotion class on campus, and they designed some of the displays and did some radio promos for us and stuff like that. So the teacher actually worked that into their class assignments, and that worked out really well. We've had some history classes that have been involved in some things, and education classes. For an example, we had a local history related exhibit about 2 years ago. And one of the teachers who are teaching students how to be teachers brought the class over, looked through the exhibit. They created a whole curriculum assignment based off of that. And we brought in some middle school students from the local school, and our EIU students worked with the Charleston Middle School students and taught them about what the exhibit was about and had them complete, an assignment while they were here and that sort of thing. So we have had some success with that. It takes a lot of pre-planning because instructors kind of want to know about that at least a semester in advance so they can work it into their curriculum. So that's not something you can do last minute. But if you can plan far enough ahead on it, that has been successful for us.
One bit I can add in, we've actually had some relatively recent success at our institution. I don't know if your institutions do like a common read. We do a one book. And we've actually worked with that because as part of the one book program, there's always a student ambassadors to the program that kind of work with the planning committee, and they every year do a display that relates to that book. So this year we're doing The Handmaid's Tale, and then they also incorporate the book into a lot of classes, and so we've used that as an entryway. With predominantly with classes that are then utilizing our special collections and archives, and so they kind of like they've been doing these scans and then this of the material, and the students then write a little bit about what they're working on that relates to that material and how it relates to, in this case, The Handmaid's Tale, which has been an interesting way. So these are not traditional displays maybe that we think of exhibits of like here are a series of books. They're just kind of like replicas that we hang up in one of our wall on across one of our walls. It's kind of a neat way to incorporate both student learning and knowledge creation with also highlighting, uh, Ashley, as you kind of alluded to, hidden collections that we don't get to see on the stacks or on the shelves. What about standards and guidelines or policies do you have in displaying exhibits? Is there a theme that you make sure that everything kind of like, so it looks like it comes from the library, or is it just like whatever it looks like, it looks like? If it's just books on a shelf, it's books on a shelf.
We always try to have a literature tie-in of some sort, books in the case or quotes from literary figures, something so that it gets people's minds kind of moving and thinking about how they could find some content like that in the library itself.
Anybody else have like approaches to guidelines or policies to to ensure product, maybe, or quality?
We recently revised our exhibits policy, and I called it up to review it before I answered this question. But it's still pretty general. It explains, we have some cases that are built in architecturally to our building, and then we have some freestanding cases that we can move around. So we have some descriptions of those and priorities and which ones are available if a campus group or organization wants to use it. We're pretty specific about the kinds of items that we can display, because we've had people bring in like live ammo before, and we're like, we can't set that out. So nothing that's living, maybe a plant, but you know, we've had people want to put some weird things in displays. So we had to kind of to spell that out a little bit. But as far as content, we leave that pretty open. But as someone else just said before me, we always try to tie it in with our library resources in some way. So no matter what the topic, we'll generally have some sort of a book display in relation to it, showing some of the things that we have available, either electronically or in print, that kind of support whatever the subject matter is.
What about promoting your exhibits? How do you go about promoting your exhibits to whatever that community looks like for you? If it's like targeted towards the students or targeted to campus in general, or you know, maybe even the public at some of our institutions. How do you go about promoting your stuff?
Well, we have a web page that we put all of our past events and displays so people can see what they've been like before. We try and keep it current, but that's one of those things where it takes time out of the day. Um, and then we usually partner with different events that we have going on. So we do social media, and we also have lots of resources on campus to get information out, such as like an MSU Today. Sometimes we'll do our local radio station will do a PSA. to stop by the library and check out our display about so and so. Little things like that, and word of mouth is huge around here.
Yeah, we pretty much just use social media to promote our events and exhibits. We just this school year got an Instagram account, so we're pretty excited about that. And we found that it's a pretty good way to reach the students. We had a Facebook account before that, and it just was not working well. So that, but I like the idea of maybe reaching out to the student newspaper and having them do a piece about the exhibit or some of the other groups on campus.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky to have the buy-in from the school that I serve. They always put out emails across their faculty and student listservs for me. The main student council body will usually put something in their email newsletter. And I'm a big fan of digital signage. If you can get a way to get on those slide rotations that schools often have set up, I love making a slide and they'll just churn it out and promote it for me. And then also what I've tried recently too is my student body is both on campus and online off campus students. So I'm lucky to be embedded in the learning management system. We use Canvas, and the online team will then send out direct messaging to the virtual community to let them know that there's a display set up, but then there's also an online equivalent. So I'll have kind of an online equivalent display for those online students to kind of interact with too in the learning management system. So it's kind of addressing both of those constituents through promotions.
Can you talk a bit more about what that looks like? Because actually, one of the questions I kind of have is like, how do any of us tackle digital displays or online exhibits? So what does that look like for you? Especially
Absolutely.
in Canvas, that sounds fancy.
Yes, yeah. So mine is very basic. We're working on developing more, I guess, related to coding. But right now, they've embedded Google Slides directly into the learning management system. So on campus, there will be a little box, and then the Google Slides are input through, and it rotates. So I'll have a cover and then a little snippet about the book because I combine both curriculum materials and research materials, and then directly link in to the ebook system so that they can just click on that slide that keeps doing like a digital rotation, and it'll take them directly to that e-resource and seeing. And that's works pretty well too. And then it's easier to track stats that way, but it's not a perfect system. So if anyone has other ways that they're working in learning management systems too, I'd love to hear it because we're just trying to experiment and see what is the most eye-catching for students, because I don't want to throw up something with a bunch of links. I'd rather have cover images in some way that it cascades through so it shows movement when you're designing through these. So we're working on that.
We do a little bit of that with our exhibits. As I said, we typically have a book display, and the librarian who puts together the book display will create a blog that goes up on our website that we can then cross-promote with the exhibit. And, it has photos of the book covers and links where they can go to check it out, or links to the electronic version of it, or whatever the case may be. And we also included, and somebody else mentioned, the digital flyers. We can create those we have something like 200 computers for public use in our building or something like that. So we always create a slide. Like you said, it's kind of like a slideshow that pops up as a screensaver on all the computers in the building. We used to have the digital signage across campus, and we used to take advantage of that, but they've gotten rid of those, so that's not an option anymore. But we do have a good buy-in from our campus media, student newspaper, TV. That's kind of hit and miss, but the radio station often does promos for us, and they have a weekly program that lasts 30 minutes where they bring someone on to talk about whatever. And usually every semester we're able to get a slot where we can promote our major exhibits, not the smaller ones, but whatever our big topic is for the semester. They'll let a couple of our librarians come on and talk about that. So we're pretty lucky for the support that they give us here on campus.
Yeah, I imagine that is super key. Anybody else? Tackling promotion? Or is it just people that come in the building, they come in the building?
I should add real quick, in addition to our usually just our major exhibits, we try to present programming related to it, lectures or music or whatever. And so that really gets people into the building more than just the exhibits themselves. A lot of times you get them in the building to go to the program, and then while they're here, hopefully they look at the exhibit. So that seems to work out better than just promoting the exhibit on its own. It's hard to tell how many people come in our building and actually stop and look at the exhibits unless you have somebody standing right there the whole time. But programs, especially if you want to get people from the greater community outside of campus, programming seems to be what's worked well for us.
What about interactive components to your exhibits and displays? Alyssa, you mentioned one that sounded like it was almost entirely interactive. Does anybody else using interactive components to their displays? Some way to engage a little more than just visual engagement? And a side question, when you do displays that are related to books and materials, how often are those materials able to be immediately checked out through the display, or are they kept under, glass lock and key?
Well, we put a sign right on the book display. These materials can be checked out. So they're not under glass. They're usually set out and open so people can flip through them. And if they want to check them out, they just carry it right over to the circulation desk and check it out. What was your other question? I forgot already.
Sorry. Interactive components to displays. Oh. Yeah, like engaging beyond just like here is an object.
Yeah. We've not done a lot of that, but for example, right now for our space exhibit for the moon landing, I was telling you about, we have a couple of sort of photo drops, or where you can stick your face in and where an astronaut would be and take your picture. And we had a civil rights exhibit a couple of years ago, where we asked a question related to civil rights and had sticky notes, and that was very popular with our students. The whole Black Lives Matter thing just happened to be going on at that time, and we had to monitor the board because it got a little out of hand sometimes, but we had a very, very big response and had to keep sort of cleaning off the board or adding more to make room. Those are the two that come to mind.
So I just wanted to hop in and say I love the idea of having photos involved for students to be able to take photos and kind of interact with your exhibit and display that way, because Instagram culture is so huge now. So not only if you had developed maybe a hashtag around your exhibit or display and had some sort of photo component, then you'd have students promoting folks to go to that. So I'm probably going to look into doing that. That sounds really, really awesome. Just wanted to say that's very cool.
What about assessment? It's the topic that always comes up when we talk about outreach activities. That is always the most inevitably difficult to discuss. How and if so, how do you assess the impact of your displays?
Well, I was thinking that what Ashley and Beth were just talking about could possibly be expanded to serve as almost a way to assess the impact, because you can then look at the hashtag and how many times it was used on Instagram. So that would be one way to do it. I think I was at a traveling exhibit once that also had programs that you could then take with you. So I mean, not everybody's going to take a program, but that would be another way to at least track some sort of a number of how many people have interacted with the exhibit. And I guess that similarly with what Beth was talking about with the Post-its on the board, every time a Post-it goes up, that's somebody interacting with it. So you could assess impact that way.
So something that I generally try to do is I send out an all staff email letting them know about what is going into the display, and if they ever notice anything that happened, or if they have interactions with people that have asked questions about it, because it's right across from our main service desk. So I'll go check in with them once in a while and just ask them how they think the booth is going, or I'm sorry, the display is going, and what they think the overall reaction is to it, but that's really about the only way we can get any sort of indication unless somebody checks out a book.
I've had a, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
I've had an interesting interaction with faculty actually when I do displays. I've noticed that there's an increase in instruction session requests because then they realize that the library has these kinds of materials. I think I would like to have discussions around these related in my class. So now I've started, when I do those, I mark it down as both outreach and then how many conversations stemmed from that with my faculty, and kind of track it that way too, to prove, okay, these are having an impact not only with the students, but then also what I can bring in and related to my teaching.
Ashley, are your pop-up displays, do you staff them, or
Yes.
so you're there?
I am there interacting with the students and faculty who come by. I don't know, I'll be trying to do it as much as I can in the future, but in the first couple months in this job, I definitely want to be me as the person who's there, so they can kind of have a face as who is their new liaison and who they will communicate with regarding to library services. So I like to be there, and kind of manually I'll make a count of how many people I interact with too. So a little bit old-fashioned, kind of doing that little tracking that way. But online we track through clicks. So the learning management system helps us track that way.
Great. Well, I know we've got 10 more minutes on the clock, and are there any questions that people wanted to ask each other about any particular issue, just to kind of see how other people handle stuff that we didn't talk about?
Well, I just wanted to offer unsolicited advice. My first library job was working in special collections, and we put together exhibits there. And one of the things that we found to be really helpful was if you go to like Home Depot or some other home improvement store, you can buy these little glass beads that are flat on the bottom but curved on top. And that can be a really great way to prop something up just a little bit more. Because from a visual standpoint, the exhibits look better when it's not just a bunch of papers all laying flat, but if you can, add different levels to it. And then from a special collection standpoint, we tried to not really use the wire book displays, although you can, instead of putting them the way that they're normally intended, you can flip them over sometimes to get yet another level of interaction. Well, not interaction, but just like varied levels in your display. And the biggest thing, though, was always thinking about the font size, because we type emails and things in 12-point font, but when you're putting up like little cards to explain more about what the item is, you want to make sure that somebody can stand and read it and not have to get really close to the object. So I think thinking about that aspect, and it's like with web design, you want to think about color contrast ratio and making sure that you're choosing a font that's not Comic Sans or Edwardian. You want something like Arial or Calibri. And it's just a lot of those little details. One of the things that I thought really made the exhibits look nice was that we actually took the time, and this would be, Beth was talking about how she has major exhibits and then side exhibits. But we took the time to print those little object cards on foam core, which again, it just made it look nicer than just printing out a piece of paper and cutting a square and throwing that in a case. So those were just things to think about with exhibits and putting it all together.
Gary, I think I saw you raise your hand earlier too.
Yes, I had like kind of two questions, both kind of related to like digital type things. I was wondering if anybody has done anything with kind of interactive displays using any AR or VR type tools, and if they have have they found workarounds to avoiding having students download specific apps in order to utilize those type of things? And my second is, for creating digital exhibits, is there any type of specific software tools that people are using? I Google Slides, but I didn't know if there was any other more of like a kind of digital museum exhibit type style tools that anybody is using that they recommend. Other than I've used Omega before for creating single kind of curated exhibits, but it's not a university or a library account. So, but using AR, we have some I guess you would call them pictures in a special room about the city of Patterson's history and everything else in the Patterson Great Falls. And if you use a certain app and hold your phone up to those pictures, it actually will take you to a video of the falls and link directly to the website of the national park and things like that. But without having students download the app and everything else, it's inaccessible. So I just want to see, pick some brains, see if anybody's done anything to do a workaround.
So with our VR system, we use Steam as the program mainly to launch the different apps. At this point, we basically have it set up that you can log into the computer using our Steam account, which already has the games preloaded. And there's a way to put it onto family mode so that nothing can be purchased. The workaround there, though, is they can log in under their own Steam account and get to it there. But we don't have it ready for people to check out on their own yet. We have it supervised anytime somebody goes to use it. So we're just working on trying to get it into our rules that, keep it clean. This is a public area because it's out in the open. Anybody can see it. So it's going to be kind of a trial by error thing once we get it up and going.
And we've been using QR codes embedded in some of our exhibits and displays with mixed results. So I don't know if anybody had any experience using those and what type of kind of redirects they've used for those, because that is a way that we can actually measure assessment if they're being used.
I can say from our experience that QR codes traditionally don't discourage interaction, because traditionally the way they are built in phones is that students need an additional app that they then have to open up to scan it. That has since changed with the most recent iOS update, that it's now built into the iPhone photo camera app. And that may be a big game changer, actually, for a lot of people. That I know libraries love their QR codes. We traditionally saw like no interactions with them, and students actually specifically said they don't use them. So we always use Bitly's, which you can still track, but people were more likely to just type up something that was really quick. We do digital displays, and I'd have to look it up. I think we have some sort of a software interface that they use for digital exhibits. And I can follow up on what that is, because I don't actually know that.
I'd be interested to find out. And we've seen the same thing with the QR codes now. That, they're basically embedded in Android and iOS. And we have we work with some of the clubs and organizations and athletics where these students, athletes, and student members of the clubs have like library hours that they're assigned to. And we developed a way for them to digitally sign in using a QR code at the entrance to the building. So when they come in, all they got to do is tap on the QR code and it signs them in for their library hours. Then when they leave, they can scan the QR and sign out. And I mean, we saw hundreds of uses on that in the fall semester. It just started in October. So we're definitely seeing the change in the use of the QR codes thanks to the technology changes of the mobile devices. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a venture starting to reconsider. I know everybody kind of gave up on it a couple of years ago, but now I think it's going to make a return, I hope.
Anybody else?
We have a open access institutional repository through bpress. And so we create exhibit pages there for each one of our major exhibits. And we post, the photos of the exhibit itself, programs that we can record. We'll put the video up there and little descriptions and that sort of thing, in addition to, you know, the related materials that we have available. And like you, there is a program that our librarians use to create those book lists that we use in the blog, and I can't think of what it's called. Similar to like LibGuides, but it's not LibGuides, it's something else. I can't think of what it's called, but I could look it up if someone's interested. But those are the only two tools I can think of from a digital standpoint that we use. We've, like you said, we've done a little bit with QR codes, and we haven't had a big result either. But I wasn't aware of what you were saying with some of the changes in the apps and the photos on cell phones now. So maybe that'll make a difference. I don't know.
I can say we use them on the fly for our fall orientation event that people use their phones for. And the students didn't even know that it was a thing. So that we're like, that's the first thing you've learned here today, was that that's a thing that you can do. Gary, to answer your question, I looked it up real quick, and it looks like we just use for our online exhibits, it's just our library blog, which I think is like a WordPress blog. So nothing, doesn't appear to be anything fancy with like rotating images, but it does incorporate like video and things like that. Well, we're at time, so I'm going to say thank you all for coming. I hope this was helpful and informational for all of you. I know I learned several things that I'm going to steal and use here, and I hope you did too. Keep an eye out in the future for our next round of roundtables. No pun intended. And also keep an eye out in the email. We'll send a follow-up feedback email just so we can get more information from you about how this went, if it did what we were hoping it did, or if it did what you were, more appropriately, what you were hoping it did, just so we can continue to improve the experience of these roundtables in the future. Thank you all. It's great meeting everybody, and hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Have a great day.